All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I want for us to think about, for today's discussion, I want for us to think about the idea of how do we operate as a team, right? And so our objective for this class session is to explore the process of team formation and examine your role and how your strengths play in that successful team. So before we go any further, think about your top five, right? If you took the Clifton assessment, what were your top five? More importantly, what was your top theme? What was the number one theme? Okay, so as you think about that, I'm going to kick things off with this short video.
When teams are able to see what they're made of and the strengths that are part of that team really come to the table, they're more cohesive, they're a stronger team, they're connected, and they really can leverage off of each other. And the more that they take a deeper dive into that, it makes them even more powerful at what they're doing. It almost kind of unleashes something that they never thought was possible before.
We have found that it opens up a new language, that you've given people a compass into understanding and a way to sort of point those, individual coaching conversations from leader to employee. And we're seeing a lot of success with that opening on a conversation that wasn't happening anymore.
We partnered strengths with 360s. So the conversation basically says, here's your 360, this is how you're showing up. And then we partner strengths with it and say, this is why you're showing up that way. Yeah, I think for the person leaving that room, they're changed. They look at their management style differently. They actually embrace it. I think in the past, the way the conversations went were basically, this is what you're doing wrong, right? And so they're constantly focused on benchmarking and measuring themselves against other managers. But the conversation this year was more a connection. It's more of this is development, pure development. Managers were able to open up more and express some of the areas that they want to work on. And then they also walked away with a set of confidence, right? A boost of confidence, rather, hey, I'm doing really well in these areas, and it's because I'm positive, or it's because I'm strategic. And they walked away with those aha moments. So we're doing team workshops right now throughout the organization, and the teams range from 3 people to 30 people. And what we're doing is really focusing on team dynamics. We integrate strengths within that.
We've also seen significant improvement in team dynamics. So learning to understand people based on their strengths and their sort of worldview, recognizing undiscovered or previously undiscovered talents and strengths, yearnings and desires that people had to express those strengths with new roles and responsibilities. It's dramatically changed the conversation, because now we find that these teams have a shorthand for talking amongst themselves, as well as cross-functionally with other teams about what their competencies are, what they're really good at, kind of what's in their swing zone, how other people can leverage them. So there's been lots of anecdotal information, as well as some concrete information about organizations doing a better job of meeting their metrics in a timely manner, and just feeling like they're being more successful at those things they're expected to do.
So it really encouraged a spirit of teamwork, regardless of location, because now they saw things in other center leaders that they could leverage where they were weak or strong, or vice versa. So I think it really gave everybody kind of a common language and a common ground to say, oh, I need your help with this because you're strong in communication, or I need your help in this because you're strong in analytic and I'm not. So I think it got them, like I said, to give them the language that enabled communication and collaboration and working together rather than us versus them.
From a team perspective, and one team in particular, the manager moved engagement massively in just a 12-month period by simply taking a strengths approach and aligning work within the team to match the people's strengths.
So when we think about the idea of using our Clifton strengths within a team, it goes along with this quote by Warren Bennis. Becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. That simple, that difficult. Warren Bennis not only was a major leadership guru in the 80s and 90s, but at one point in time, actually in the early 80s, he was the president of the University of Cincinnati. But when we think about leadership, when we think about teams, when we think about our strengths, what we offer to teams, it is that introspection of yourself, okay? But more importantly, knowing the dynamic of how your strengths interplay with the strengths of others and vice versa. So not only are you required to know your strengths and what that means for you, but have an understanding of what other people's strengths are, how those strengths interact with you, and how you can move an organization forward, okay? As a refresher, again, strengths are meant to be descriptive, not prescriptive, okay? By saying that you're a relator doesn't mean that I am a relator because the test says that I am. You're described as a relator because of the behavior that you exhibit within with one-on-one conversation or within a group, right? And relator is number one for me, my number one signature theme. Using your strengths as a way to describe behavior is important, not to put people in specific boxes, okay? Or in another sense, if someone says they're a relator, they have to be doing X, Y, and Z. Not necessarily, because when you think about the other strengths that person exhibits, it could be either overshadowing or morphing into a different behavior, okay? Clifton strengths are meant to be a measurement of your potential and a way of focusing on what you're good at and not your weaknesses. Okay, so we have an opportunity again to focus what we're good at, not what we're weak at. And using Clifton strengths within a team and as you build a team is one way of forming a balanced team. When we think about, everyone that, if you have a group that are full of woos, right, they're not going to get anything done. And I'll explain in a moment. So you have to have some balance. You also have to have perspective, or in another sense, a diversity of thought and diversity of behavior. Okay. Finally, when we allow the behaviors of the themes to connect with us, we begin to see how the strengths and the themes can interplay amongst each other, right? And so when you see a combination of two or more themes, we can see how we could achieve greater success. Once again, talent is that spontaneous, repetitive, natural, recurring pattern of feeling, thought, and behavior or motivation, okay? The theme that we're talking about is the grouping of common talents that is then translated to a strength where it's how it's applied, okay? When we think about as it relates to an organization, we take your strength and put it within the idea of fit. Is the role that you have, are the responsibilities that you have appreciative of your strengths or in alignment with your strengths? Okay. And finally, when we think about a group, the goal and the goal-making process and the goal achievement is a self-discovery, a self-reflection of the process of using your strength, okay? And it's a means of understanding your strength and talent and leveraging them for fit and success within an organization or group, okay? When we think about the idea of how that relates in terms of how we lead groups, I want to remind everyone about the idea of management versus leadership, okay? When we think about management is the day-to-day tasks of the organization. It's about how we keep things in order. When you think about at your co-op locations, your actual supervisor, those are your managers, okay? They operate within a set of rules or procedures or guidelines. Leaders, on the other hand, facilitate change. They are the type of people that can embrace the idea where it's not about the rules, but more so the value of the organization and lining people up based on that value, based on that strength, based on that on what people want to do to further an organization. More specifically, when we think about leadership is defined by the Higher Education Research Institute as A leader is not necessarily a person who holds a formal position or is perceived as a leader by others. Okay, a leader is one who's able to affect positive change for the betterment of others. So, in another sense, everyone has the potential of being a leader. Okay. Moreover, when we talk about the process of leadership, it's not described simply in terms of the behavior of the individual, but rather leadership involves the collaborative relationships that lead to collective action grounded in shared values of the people who work together to affect positive change. When we think about the key words of the idea of leadership here, okay, there are several key concepts that come to mind. One is the idea of relationships. Okay, when we think about leaders and leadership and so forth, there has to be a transactional process relating to others in a group or organization. Okay, we think about action. You know, a leader or the individual who exhibits leadership is moving people to action. Okay, because they have in common shared values, right? And then what we're thinking about here is positive change. So what we assume here is that leadership is in the process of positive change, for not only for an organization, but a society or a community, right? Thinking about it as engineers, we think about it sometimes as in a formula, right? So here's the formula for leadership. Leadership equals relationships plus action plus shared values moving to positive change. Okay. So when we think about that idea of leadership, we assume that it's positive. Okay. Going back to what was discussed last week, we assume that what we do as engineers is for the positive good of the society. Okay. So as leaders, engineers are always thinking about positive change, we assume. Okay. We can also assume that there are shared values, again, grounded within the values of the profession. But the thing that you have control over, and the thing that I charge you with, is the relationships and the action. What relationships are you forging with others to bring on a specific action as engineers? Okay. Now, I asked you earlier in the conversation to think about your strengths, right? So again, think about those top 5 strengths. When we think about how your strengths are aligned with a group, right? There are specific domains, if you will, of how the signature themes of the Clifton strengths are actually grouped together, okay? And this actually then imparts the idea that people within these domains, if you will, bring about a specific change within an organization, right? So let me share with you another video.
It's important to realize that those 34 themes are built on more than 70 years of interviews, of research, of observation into what goes right when people succeed. We also have a way to simplify these 34 into 4 different domains, and that comes from supplemental research about how do leaders lead. So your strengths domains essentially answer the question, how do I make sense of the world on a greater scale than just my individual themes? There are 4 of them: executing, strategic thinking, relationship building, and influencing.
When leaders look at those domains and fill in a team strengths grid, and they start understanding where are we as a team, what is our strongest domain, that tells us something about how the team works together. And again, I think it just amplifies where do we go first? What is our default when we have a project? Now, what we found is that what predicts the success of the team is not being balanced in all 4 domains, but knowing your strengths. So if a team knows who they are, how they get things done, that is a far bigger predictor of success than having balance in all 4 domains.
So I'm going to have you take a look at these 4 domains in a moment. And then, think about, where do your strengths lie? Which one is, which signature theme is in which domain? Okay. So the first one is actually the executing domain. And here are the signature themes within that domain. Okay. Once again, people in the executing domain are the ones that know how to make things happen. Okay. They're the ones that can get things done for you, provide focus in getting the task or the goal. Okay. More importantly, when we think about these 9 themes, they're the hardest working of your group. Okay. They tend to get things done with speed, precision, and accuracy. They put in the hard work now so that when it's time to move, they're ready on a moment's notice. Okay. So it's important to have people with these themes in your group to put ideas into action. Okay. The next is the influencing domain. And the themes in this domain pose the question, how do you influence others? Okay. They will help you take charge, speak up, and make sure people are heard. When teams need to sell an idea outside an organization, the team will turn to these people with these themes to convince others, because they have not only the task, they not only know the task at hand, but they know how to influence others. They know how to sell the big idea. They're able to speak up and help people understand the broader goal. Okay, they are influencers to make things happen and move forward. The next domain is the relationship building domain, and these themes answer the question: how do you build and nurture strong relationships within an organization? They help you hold a team together, right? When we think about an internal and external communication or sounding board, the people in the relationship building themes are the ones that will help hold the group together. They're the glue of the organization. Okay. While certainly not the only themes that deal with people. Okay. The themes in this domain have an ability to take the human component into the equation. They look at how individuals fit into the larger picture, and I mean individuals within a group, and they create pathways for people to thrive. They're strong relational connectors that continue to hold a group around a cause, an idea, or around each other. Okay. The final theme are the strategic thinking is the strategic thinking domain. And the themes in this domain answer the question, how do you absorb, think about, and analyze the information and the situation? Okay. People with these themes help you make better decisions and create better outcomes. When a plan needs to be made or a new idea created for solving a problem, the folks with these eight themes can help accomplish that. Whether it's thinking into a current problem or dreaming about an outcome of the future, these themes can take a thought or idea and look for the best way to move forward with it. So take a look at these themes. Think about your top 5. Right? If you have, at some point, you will have a majority of your themes in one of these domains. Okay. So, for example, if you have like 2 in the executing, 2 in the influencing, and 1 in the relationship building, the way you work together in teams, you utilize the executing and influencing domains, right? If it's a tie, if there's a tie between domains where you have 2 and 2, then you have an opportunity to pick which one you want to focus on. Okay. And then given in any situation or any group, you could lean to one that would help the group versus the other domain, right? So if you have a bunch of folks that are in the influencing domain and you have both influencing and executing, you could be in the executing domain and work and be just as contributory to the organization. Okay. So think about that. Think about your top 5. more importantly, where does your number one signature theme fall? Where does it fall within these 4 domains? Okay. So some questions for you to think about as you think about how your top 5 falls within these domains. Okay. First question is, which domain is most dominant for you? Right. When I think about mine in particular, I think about a majority of my themes are actually in the relationship building domain. Which domain are you least dominant in? Okay. And it could be the one where you have one theme in or one where you don't have a theme in. And for me, that's strategic thinking. Okay. Are your coworkers or peers aware of your talents and strengths in the domain that you're most dominant in? So, for example, if someone is in the influencing domain and they have a lot of communication, do people recognize that that individual is very communicative or not? I will say, as where for me, going back to me as an example, where I have relator and individualization in my relationship building domain, and that's my most dominant domain. I will say that a lot of people recognize how my work with students one-on-one, how I counsel students and so is really helpful, and it does showcase how I utilize that domain with others. Okay. The final question here in this slide is this: have you been blind to any or lesser domains? Okay, so if you will, it's like a Johari window. You know you're visible. You see what's in front of you, what's visible to you, in terms of how people automatically describe you. Okay, but then within your blind spots, there are specific behaviors or domains that you're not aware of, right? And so, have you had the opportunity to think about that? Have you had the opportunity to think about how you've been blind to some of the lesser domains or some of the lesser themes that you do not utilize on a regular basis? Okay. So, for example, when I think about the idea of harmony, right? For me, harmony is somewhere in the bottom half of my signature themes. It's something that I'm not aware of sometimes, but people tend to think that I'm not as harmonious as I should be as a manager. But then I have to rely on other people within my team to help build that harmony and also make that aware for me, right? Something to think about as you think about how your signature themes interact with everybody. One of the tools that I offer teams, and when I do this with organizations, one of the tools that I offer them is this grid. And if you would, say take the top line, that's your manager, right? And you would list the manager's top 5, and then everyone underneath that organization, underneath that manager or that leader, would be listed there with, and then their strengths in the top 5 order. Okay, what you notice in this grid is that you have a lot of folks who are, in a sense, you have a lot of folks who have strengths in the relationship building domain based on the number of number ones. Okay, so out of the 8 people in the organization, you've got 8 people. You have 4 people who have a number one signature strength in the relationship building domain. Okay, so in a sense, you could say that many of the folks in this group would be more apt to create balance, they have the desire to create balance, and more importantly, they want to get along with everybody, right? you'll notice that in the executing domain, there's several 4s and 5s. Okay. And for the manager, responsibility and achiever are in the lower half, or the bottom 5 of the top 10, right? So it could be that this team could use more folks that are they have executing ability, but it may mean that this group may need more folks to be to take the lead in making things happen, being the executor, and they do. So this individual has it as a number 1 and number 2 in terms of the number of themes within that executing domain. And finally, when you look at the influencing domain, you have again fours here. You got a 5, but not as many folks ranking within the influencing domain. But your leader or manager has themes in the influencing domain in the top 10. And so there's an opportunity here for some balance in that respect, right? So again, when we think about your organization, right, how do you look at everyone's themes across the board? How do you look at everyone's strengths? Take a look at your student organizations, or if you will, later on, when you look at your senior capstone teams, put your strengths together. Take a look at how your strengths align, which domains do your top 5 lie, right? And so when we think about that and you start that formation process, there's some prompts that would be helpful for you moving forward, okay? When you think about putting yourself in teams, here are things to consider. 1, share with everyone this statement. You get the best of me when, and then fill in the rest, right? So if relator is your number 1, you get the best of me as a relator when you need me to work with someone one-on-one, right? You get the worst of me when, right? Again, this is understanding not only the limits of how you utilize your signature strength or your signature theme, but more importantly, the context in which you utilize your strengths. Okay? So, like, you get the worst of me when I'm stressed. You get the worst of me when I'm dealing with multiple projects. Right? You can count on me to do what? Based on your signature themes, what are you good at? Okay, again, this is another form of internalizing and defining for yourself what those strengths are for you. And finally, what do I need from you? So not only are you giving to an organization, but there is some form of payback. There is some form of way for you to gain energy in this relationship. So what do you need from others to make you more contributory? What do you need from others to make you more committed to the organization? Okay. So those are some thoughts to consider as we think about how you utilize your signature themes within the group, right? And some other things to consider when utilizing your signature themes. And one of the things to consider also is when you are in an organization, have the leadership grid or the strengths grid with you at all times, right? When you think about a task, a project, when you formulate your Gantt charts, okay, and your timelines, think about your signature themes and everyone else's signature theme and domain when you start thinking about those accomplishments and those tasks. When the other part also, when we think about the group formation process, so there's you form a group, you create norms for the group, you create the task, and then you start evaluating, celebrate based on strengths. Okay, when you think about when you reached a milestone in your project, how are you best rewarding people or giving praise to individuals based on their strengths? Are there questions at this point? Okay. hearing none, thank you all for coming today. Once this video is rendered, I will post this on the Canvas site and provide additional context and also resources for you over the next day or so. All right. Thank you all.